Hi everyone. So today, before we jump into the video, I just want to be totally transparent with you all. I will be looking down and away from the camera at different moments throughout this video because I will be looking at my computer where my notes are, and generally I try not to do that. But today's video and the content in which I will be speaking on today is just so near and dear to me and so important that I don't want to mispronounce, misspeak. I don't want to miss a thing. I want to be making sure that whatever I say is what I intended to say, and I just want to give the respect to this topic that it deserves. And so I will be looking down at my notes. I hope you understand, and thank you so much for watching, and let's jump right into the video. So the first time that I remember being what I now know was sexualized is at 10 years old when I had gotten a pair of Mary-Kate and Ashley shorts, and I wore them to school one day, and I got in trouble for wearing those shorts because when I put my arms to my sides, the hem of my shorts was shorter than the length of my fingertips. And I had a teacher tell me that because my body was much more developed than the other girls, I should not wear shorts like that because it made me look too fast. Then, when I was 11 years old, so just a year later, I was told that I could no longer go over to my cousin's house because she had two older stepbrothers. I think they were maybe between 15 and 16 at the time, and I could no longer go over to play with her because she had two older brothers, and it was possible that if I spent too much time over there that they would begin to like me and to be inappropriate with me. And it was around this exact same age that I was told that I had to be more mindful of what I wore inside of my home whenever my stepfather's friends came over to play cards or to do yard work or whatever they were there to do. Then a few years later, when I was 14 years old and finishing up my last year of middle school, so my 8th grade year, I had a teacher call me a black blonde bombshell, among many other inappropriate comments that he made when I was alone with him or in front of the class. Then, between the ages of around 15 years old to about 17 years old, I had boys who at school would not talk to me, would not even look at me when passing me in the hallways, but they would find the time in the evening to message me online and to message my phone, asking me to have sex with them and telling me that I should have sex with them because only they could handle a body like mine. Then, when I turned 17 years old, I think it was towards the end of my 17th year, I began dating a guy who was around 24 at the time, going on 25. And this was a guy who I never saw in the daytime, who never introduced me to anyone, to any of his friends, who dated other girls while dating me, and who never, I remember so distinctly, never called me pretty or beautiful or gorgeous or any of those things, but would just tell me that I was either sexy or that I was thick or that I was fine. And this guy would always try to shame me into having sex with him, and he would tell me that I was being stuck up and that I was a prude and that I was a loser for not wanting to have sex with him, and that I was lucky. I was lucky for a guy like him to even give a girl like me attention. And so when he finally broke me down and I gave in, then he proceeded to tell me how desperate I was, that I was a whore, that I was a slut, and any other derogatory term that you can think of, he called me that. And then came my 19th year, and I was in college. I think I was like a freshman at that point because I was a little bit older than my friends were. and I was dating this one guy who took me to a party, and I didn't want to drink, but he told me that I was just a stuck-up, prude, loser, nerd, geek, just all the things he told me that I was, because I didn't want to drink because I was 19 years old, which I think is okay. But he told me that I was just way too stuck up and thought I was way too good than I really was, and that I was just being a loser if I didn't want to drink. So I drank, and I got way too drunk because I never drank. And then he took me home from that party. He took me back to my dorm, and he took me into my dorm room, and he turned off all the lights, and he invited his best friend to come into my bedroom, and I will stop there. I don't tell you any of my background of my story as a plea for sympathy. I really don't. I am fortunate enough that I have always had the resources available to help me heal from these really traumatic, really disgusting experiences. I am really fortunate, and I'm honestly really confident and happy to say that now at 29 years old, 30 this year, that I have been able to truly heal from those experiences. And of course, I've never forgotten what has happened to me, but I can say that I have forgiven the people who have hurt me, whether it was intentionally or unintentionally. I have forgiven them, and I have moved forward. And the actions of those individuals do not define me, and those individuals did not destroy me. But I am lucky just because I was lucky. That is the only reason that I'm fortunate enough to say what I just said, to be in a good space now, because I have had the resources to get to that space. And unfortunately, there are so many young Black women who do not, who will not, or who have not, and who will not have those same resources that I had. And resources aren't just therapist or medication. Resources also include family, friends, teachers, guardians, just people in your life that will listen to you, that will really hear you, and that will believe you. In the Black community, we have a problem with the hyper-sexualization and the over-sexualization of Black women, and in particular, young Black women, including children, including teens, adolescents, and children. I'm talking young children. We have a problem of hypersexualizing and over-sexualizing young Black women. And yes, I do know that there are women who play into and who profit off of this hypersexualization and over-sexualization. I know that those women exist, and I also know that that in no way, shape, or form diminishes the corresponding point, which is that the Black community, within the Black community, we have a problem with the hypersexualization and over-sexualization of our women. And not only do we have a problem with the hypersexualization and over-sexualization of Black women within the Black community, but we also have a problem with the lack of giving a shit about the hypersexualization and over-sexualization of our women. So I'm going to share with you some gruesome statistics that are not going to be easy to hear, that will not be easy to digest, and I just encourage you to brace yourselves. So every 1 in 4 Black girls will be abused before the age of 18. 1 in 5 Black women are survivors of rape. 17% of Black women experience sexual violence by an intimate partner. That is so disgusting. By an intimate partner, by someone they know and someone that they at least assume to have a close relationship with. 20% of Black women are rape victims, which is a higher share than women overall, than women of different ethnicities. 20% of Black women are rape victims, and 35% of Black women experience some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. And these statistics are just like the tip of the iceberg. And this is just what I can share with you without having like a mental breakdown, because I'm one of these women. I'm one of these women. You watching this, you may be one of these women, or you may know one of these women. One of these women may be your mother, or your sister, or your niece, or your cousin, or your coworker. You either are one of these women, or you know one of these women. That's how ridiculous. That's how high these numbers are, that either you are one of these women or you know one of these women. So one of the key and likely most well-known effects of the sexualization of young Black women, which in most cases leads to the sexual abuse of young Black women, is the spike in teen pregnancy. Statistics show that 62% of pregnant and parenting adolescents had experienced contact molestation, attempted rape, or just like flat out rape prior to their first pregnancy. And 61% of pregnant teenagers had reported having had an unwanted sexual experience, sexual encounter. And thankfully, overall, at least within our nation, and when I say our nation, I mean here in the United States, overall, there has been a decline in teen pregnancies for a variety of reasons. And still, even though teen pregnancies have overall decreased, still to this day, the pregnancy rate for African American adolescent females is still disproportionately higher than adolescent pregnancies among different ethnicities. And please do not misconstrue what I am saying. Children are a blessing. Being able to birth children, to carry children to birth, that is a blessing. That is a gift. That is a part of the magic of this world and of being a human being. Children are a blessing. But having children is a very complicated, very nuanced, and very, very difficult predicament for that young person to be in. And one of the most detrimental outcomes of teen pregnancies that does not happen, of course, in all cases, nothing happens in all cases, but one of the most common occurrences of a teenage pregnancy is the perpetuation of poverty, is the prolongment. I don't even know if that is a word, but is the continuation of poverty, is poverty being passed down. And this happens because one of the key reasons behind teenage pregnancy in the first place is poverty and a lack of resources. And therefore, when someone who is in that situation has a child, they are much more likely to pass on their impoverished state to their offspring. And we all know that poverty is so incredibly hard to escape. It is much more likely for poverty to continue to be passed down from generation to generation than from someone to break the cycle or to escape from the cycle of poverty. But in my opinion, even more so, I know this might sound ridiculous, but even more so than poverty and the continuation of poverty, one of the most devastating effects of teen pregnancy that comes from the hyper-sexualization and over-sexualization of young Black women is that this just helps to perpetuate that hypersexualization and that over-sexualization. And it does so through the detachment or the disassociation that many victims of sexual abuse experience and endure. In not all cases, but I can speak for myself, and I know many other women who have been victims of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct, there is a sort of like detachment or disassociation, a divide, a separation, and an isolation or an estrangement. That's the word I'm looking for. An estrangement that one feels with their body. And it usually manifests in like one of two ways. Either that person sees their body as like a battle zone, and something that should be hidden or something that should be punished, something that should not be considered as valuable or as worthy or even as looked at. And you see many victims of sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, who do not take care of themselves. They don't practice proper hygiene. They might wear baggy clothes. They may be the people who just shy away from any and all attention. And of course, this does not happen in all cases, but this is a common expression of someone who has been through sexual abuse, sexual misconduct. Then on the other side, there are individuals who, because of what has happened to them, they still feel that sense of estrangement and they still feel that sense of not having worth, not having value within themselves. So they seek value without themselves. They seek external validation, and they may do so through wearing very tight clothing, very revealing clothing, clothing that garners a lot of attention, especially a lot of male attention. These people can be hypersexual, over-sexual people because that's what they know that they are worth. That's what they know that they are good for. So they're trying to find that validation through what they have been conditioned to believe that they are good for, where their worth is. And as women, there's honestly just there's nothing more upsetting and just more heartbreaking to me than for us to feel separation from our bodies, to not feel that our bodies are the sacred temples that they are, but to feel that our bodies are just property, just property for someone else to claim and to certify, to find value in, and to manipulate and to abuse. There's nothing more devastating, more heart-wrenching than that. But all is not lost, and all is never lost. In life, all is never lost. There are ways within our community as a collective that we can decrease the numbers, that we can change the statistics, and that we can also alleviate the impact of these traumatic events that so many of our women have experienced, have endured. The first thing that is so commonly overlooked in its impact and in its efficacy when it comes to protecting our young Black women is to just check in on our young Black women. I feel like there's this idea, and I'm not saying it's not rooted in any truth, but there's this idea that at a certain age, kids just no longer will talk to you, teenagers, adolescents, they just close themselves up in their room and they will no longer be in conversation with any adult. But as a middle school teacher, as someone who works on a day-to-day basis with 7th graders and 8th graders, with 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and even a few 15-year-olds, and as someone who previously taught at the collegiate level, I can tell you that if you just provide an open, honest, non-judgmental ear to these young people, you will be surprised at what they will share with you, and you will be surprised at how much trust they will bestow upon you. And there is so much more depth to these beings than I personally think they are given credit for. And just to give you a concrete example, I want to share with you a scenario from last year when I was teaching predominantly 8th graders. And at the time, they were all between 13 and 14. I think I had one who had just turned 15 years old. And I asked all of my young girls in that class to raise their hand if they had ever experienced being catcalled or any type of verbal misconduct. And each and every single one of them not only raised their hand at experiencing being catcalled, but admitted that the person who had catcalled them, who had said something sexually inappropriate to them, had not only been clearly at least 10 years or more older than them, that all of them had admitted to this happening to them before the age of 13 or 14. I had one young woman who told me that at 10 years old, when walking the streets of New York City, she had been catcalled due to the shape of her body at 10 years old. Second, I would encourage parents and guardians especially to be mindful as much as you can in this digital age, to be mindful of the content that you are allowing your children, in particular your young women, to consume. And you know what? I don't even want to say in particular young women, young men, all young people should be careful about the content that they are consuming. But as you know, this video is about young Black women, so just want to add that little disclaimer there. Now, as I just said, I know that in the digital age, it's really difficult to be careful, to be conscious, to know what type of content your child is consuming at all times. And to be honest, I think that is perfectly fine. The reality is kids do need exposure to certain things on their own terms so that they can be able to make decisions on their own terms, and just so that they can be fully functional and adjusted to the climate in which they are growing up in. And at the same time, I do think that there is a limit on the type of content that they should be able to consume with your consent. And what I really want to emphasize when it comes to this content is that when you set limits around the content that you allow your child to consume, please explain to them why. I know, look, I do this in class all the time. Sometimes they'll ask me something and then they'll say why, and I'm like, because I said so, and that's the end of that. But when it comes to these very sensitive, very significant, influential topics, it's really important that you have open and honest conversations with your children about what it is that you are trying to protect them from and why. They actually really do need to know why. They need to know the ramifications of what it is they are consuming. And speaking of being in communication with children, it is really, really, really important that when talking to our young women, that you have open and honest conversations with them about sex and sexuality and what is a healthy sexual relationship with someone else, but also with themselves. Too many people avoid having these conversations with the young people in their lives because it's awkward, it's cringy. Nobody wants to think about the young person in their life being in any sort of sexual circumstance. But the reality is they are a human being. Children are human beings, adolescents are human beings, and unless they are asexual, which that really is truly a thing, but unless they are just someone who does not have these sexual urges, these sexual drives, they do have these sexual urges and sexual drives, and they're going to have a ton of questions about those drives and those instincts and what to do with them. And it is your job. It is your job, whether you like it or not. And if you can't do it, then you need to find someone who can. But it is your job to properly educate them in an as objective and non-judgmental way as possible. I can tell you, again, as a middle school teacher, I can tell you with confidence that what you think that they are too young to be talking about, to be wondering about, they are not. They are not. They are talking about that. They are wondering about that. And they are talking to each other about that. And they're giving incorrect, false information because they're not having the proper conversations at home. So please, please, especially for our young women, there are so many young women out there who are doing things with others, who are talking about things with others, and who are sacrificing themselves and their own potential for pleasure because they don't know what to look for, they don't know what to ask for, they don't know what to expect. So they have no expectations and they don't chase after any of their desires or their expectations, and then they end up in very compromising situations that ironically you were trying to avoid by avoiding this conversation with them, but they're going to walk right into it because they don't know better, because you didn't tell them what better was. And the last thing that I just want to say to all of this is I really want to emphasize the importance of being as objective and non-judgmental as you can when it comes to discussing these topics with the young people in your lives, because honestly, it's just, our job is just to plant the seed. Our job is to plant the seed, to water and nourish the seed, and then sit back and watch it grow and however it grows. Our job is just to show them a healthy relationship. We are supposed to just give children an example of what a healthy, loving, caring relationship looks like so that they know what to look for and what to avoid in their own adult lives. So please, Stop trying to tell them who to be and what to be, and just show them. Just show them. Show them why this way might be better than this way. And if you show them, and if you really live in what you say, they will follow. Plant the seed and it will grow. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I know that some parts were really hard to get through. There were some parts that were really hard for me to get through. But I hope that this video inspires you to take action and to protect our youth, because they are our future. They are our here, and they are our now, and they are our later. And it is our job to protect them. So until next time, stay safe, be well, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.